to keep grip on Russia investigation. One of the reporters, Maggie Haberman, joins us now on the phone. Maggie, explain what you have learned. What's in this?
Sure. This is. I would like to just be clear. This is primarily Mike Schmidt, my colleague's reporting, and he did a terrific job. He came up with very detailed reporting about how Don McGahn, the White House counsel, went at the urging of the president to the Attorney General and asked him not to recuse from the Russia probe, which, as we know, Jeff Sessions did without telling the president he was going to do it in advance. Made the president very angry. He's been angry about it ever since. It has set off a chain reaction ever since. The idea that McGahn would go do this knowing that this was potentially problematic is striking. When the president was told that Sessions was still going to recuse himself, the president was very angry, fumed that he needed to be personally protected, wanted some kind of a relationship between himself and the AG, the way he believed that Bobby Kennedy had protected John F. Kennedy. This is how he cited it. Mike also learned that 4 days before James Comey was fired, an aide to Jeff Sessions went to Capitol Hill looking for quote-unquote dirt on Comey. The timing is quite notable.
Wait a minute. I just want you to repeat that. 4 days before Comey was fired, an aide of Sessions?
Yes, looking for dirt, quote-unquote. Went to Capitol Hill looking for negative information about James Comey.
Do we know at whose behest that person did that?
We don't, but it was somebody working for Jeff Sessions. It's not clear to me whether Sessions directly knew or didn't directly know, but it was certainly coming from the Department of Justice.
And just to be clear, you talked about Don McGahn going to try to convince Jeff Sessions not to recuse himself. He was doing that, according to this reporting, at the order of President Trump.
Correct. The president wanted to be personally protected by the Attorney General with regard to the Russia probe. This is the clearest, most substantial reporting we have seen about what the president demanded and what he wanted of the Attorney General with regard to this probe.
Maggie Haberman from the New York Times talking about reporting from her and mostly from Michael Schmidt, as pointed out. Thank you very much, Maggie. I want to bring in CNN chief legal analyst Jeff Toobin, Georgetown University Law School's Carrie Cordero. She's a CNN legal analyst as well. Jeff, what is the significance of this?
That this is potentially more evidence that the president was obstructing justice in connection with the Comey investigation. I mean, here you have the whole reason Jeff Sessions recused himself from the Russia investigation is that he knew he was part of what the Russia investigation was going to be investigating. It was appropriate for him to recuse himself. By trying to undo that decision through his counsel, Don McGahn, the president is showing that he wanted to be protected from that investigation. That is what obstruction of justice is. Now, this alone, I don't think, would amount to a crime in and of itself. But when you look at the pattern of behavior, whether it is firing James Comey for conducting this investigation, whether it is telling Lester Holt, telling the Russian visitors that he fired James Comey because of the Russia investigation, all of it adds up to the potential for a charge of obstruction of justice against the president. And the Times reporting today is another brick in that wall.
Carrie, how do you see this?
Well, Donald Trump, as a candidate and now as president, has a fundamentally flawed understanding of the role of the Attorney General and the role of the Justice Department. And he thought on the campaign, and he apparently has still thought that throughout his first year as president, that the Department of Justice and the prosecutors and investigators are an arm of the White House. And he doesn't understand the independence that the Attorney General needs to have. Jeff Sessions, whether people disagree with his politics, with his policy positions, or whether with the policy direction that he's taken the Justice Department, in probably the most important decision he had to make, which was recusing himself in the Russia investigation, he did the right thing. And he adhered to the ethics advice from the professional ethics lawyers in the department that the right thing to do was to recuse from that investigation. And if this new New York Times is correct, this new New York Times report that's just coming out is correct, then he did so under tremendous political pressure from the White House counsel, which was coming from the president.
Jeff, the idea that someone who works for an aide to Jeff Sessions went to Capitol Hill to, according to the New York Times, find dirt on Comey 4 days before Comey was fired, how significant is that?
Well, it suggests that the president was determined to fire James Comey for whatever reason. I mean, why it's significant that he's looking for dirt is that it suggests that he made the decision to fire him, and after the fact tried to find a justification for it. I mean, that's the implication of this reporting in the Times. That contrary to the original explanation for firing James Comey, which was that the president disapproved of how mean he was to Hillary Clinton, which was really a preposterous explanation from the very beginning, it suggests that there was a different reason, and the president was looking for justifications to support firing him, but the decision to fire him had already been made.
Kerry, is there any conflict that the fact that this person was, an aide to Jeff Sessions, and Jeff Sessions, had recused himself from anything to do with Russia, where Comey obviously was dealing with the Russia investigation? It's
just an odd thing to think about, that an aide to the Attorney General would be going to Capitol Hill to look for, quote, dirt. I don't even know sort of what that means, looking for dirt on Jim Comey. What would seem a little bit more likely would be that they would go to Capitol Hill, if this happened, to look for political support for firing James Comey. In other words, they knew that there were perhaps Democrats on the Hill who were unhappy with how he handled the Clinton matter, and so maybe they were looking for support. I don't understand at all why anybody, let alone an advisor to the Attorney General, would go to Capitol Hill looking for some kind of derogatory information on him. But it also, if true, just sort of supports the understanding that the reason for firing the FBI director was concocted and was not based on any merit-related reason or anything related to his performance in his role as FBI director.
Jeff, yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I just, one thing this report really does is it cries out for Don McGahn to give public testimony before Congress about what he did. I mean,
but could he do that? I mean, if he was acting at the behest of the president, isn't that covered by, is it covered by attorney-client privilege or by presidential?
Not attorney-client. I mean, the argument perhaps would be executive privilege. Right. But remember, the key moment in the Watergate, congressional hearings was the testimony of John Dean, who held the exact same job as Don McGahn holds now. He testified at great length and in an incriminating way about his conversations with President Nixon. It seems entirely incumbent upon Don McGahn, given the very questionable nature of this exchange, that he should be required to tell Congress, and thus the American people, what the heck was going on.
Although, Jeff, the number of people from this White House who have testified, who have invoked, not executive privilege, because it wasn't officially invoked by the White House, but some, uninvented form of that, of, well, I just don't want to tell you my conversations with the president because I don't think I should. It seems like everyone else has done it. Why wouldn't Don McGahn do that?
Well, he might, but we never know. Congress never knows until it asks. And look, the fundamental fact of these congressional investigations is that Republicans are in charge. Republicans are in the House, in charge in the House, and they're in charge in the Senate. And these investigations seem much more designed to protect President Trump than to investigate him.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean those of us who are following it from the outside shouldn't say that Congress should do its job and get these people under oath and find out what they knew and what they did.
Jeff Kerry, if you will, just stay with us. We're joined as well by former senior White House advisors David Gergen and David Axelrod. David Gergen, you've read this New York Times reporting. What is the significance?
Well, I agree absolutely.